All right, we're live.
Hi, everyone. For watching on the replay, just hold on for a minute and we'll get started in just a little bit. All right, let's get started. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right, great. So I'm Helen Partlow. I'm an attorney at Waypoint Immigration USA, and I specialize in EB-2 NIW applications. So today we're going to talk about the difference between PERM and EB-2 NIW, or which one maybe you want to do, or maybe both. But first, just to introduce the NIW, it's the National Interest Waiver. It's for the employment-based second preference category. And you do not need a company to sponsor you for this application. You can bring it on your own behalf, but it does not grant you any work authorization or any sort of status until you actually get that green card in hand. So this is more of a long-term planning device for people that want to end up with a green card in America. So for most countries, the wait, if you do get this application approved, is probably 3 to 5 years before your priority date would become current. And for those from other countries like China and especially India, the wait is significantly longer than that. So you have to check the visa bulletin to see what the priority date is, if you're able to actually apply to adjust your status or go through like consular processing. So that's another thing. You don't have to be in America to apply for an NIW. You can be from anywhere within the world. Usually my clients, a lot of them are already here on H-1B in particular. So that's why today we're going to talk about PERM and how that kind of goes with the EB-2 NIW. So a lot of people that are on H-1B, typically would go through the PERM process with their employer. They go through the labor certification, and it takes several years to go through PERM at this point, because there just seems to be a lot of delays and things kind of moving slowly, and a lot of employers are pausing their program or they're doing layoffs. So PERM is up in the air for a lot of people. So that is the typical kind of pathway that's intended for people to get a green card, but that is very much tied to your job and to your company. You have to be with the company when your priority date's current in order to be able to adjust your status and get the green card. With the NIW, you can bring it on your own, sometimes because PERM is failing or being paused or just shot down so much. I have been seeing more and more employers bringing in NIW for their employees. So in that scenario, your employer is the petitioner and you would be the beneficiary. So usually that company has their own attorney team or a firm that they work with closely for all of their needs, and that person would be the one bringing it. But in that scenario, the attorney is representing your company. They are not representing you. They represent the petitioner, which is your company. So there's a lot of things that can kind of go wrong when an employer brings your NIW application. Because again, they're doing things for your company, not with you. And typically I've heard like they don't really ask for your input too much. They don't really, ask for your help per se. And it's really about what your future vision is. And, they might establish your proposed endeavor without you having any sort of input on that. And it can kind of pigeonhole you in a way that if you were to bring it yourself, you would do things a little differently. So in these kind of scenarios, your employer can do a PERM for you at the same time they do an NIW, at the same time you do your own NIW. So any of these three kind of scenarios can happen all at once, concurrently at the same time. Usually your employer would not probably want to do PERM and NIW. They would wait, for one to kind of get results, so to speak. But the PERM is very much tied to your company, and the NIW gives you more flexibility. So I wrote down a few things. I'm just checking my notes that I wanted to make sure that I say. So the NIW is showing what your work is and how it's impactful for America and how it would help advance different things that America wants to advance. So one hot topic that seems to come up often is AI. So AI is something that, America is very interested in advancing and implementing in many different kind of scenarios. So in that instance, if you are doing work that is in AI, you could maybe align with different priorities of the federal government, but that's not the entire analysis. That's only one part of the analysis. The first thing is to think, okay, well, does my work align with something that the government's trying to advance? So AI, like I said, is a big one. If you're doing something maybe helping with healthcare or supply chain, cybersecurity, those are just the ones that kind of pop off in the top of my head. Anything that is kind of impactful and really broadly impactful. So it could be things like even in finance, if you're trying to like change things with like implementing things or policy changes or adding an AI or a whole bunch of different things could be in the national importance there. Could even be like in the energy space where you're helping America be less reliant on other companies. So that's kind of like the first thing, is to think about what you are doing and how does that really tie into things that the government's trying to also advance. It's usually a lot of STEM kind of applications. Those are the ones that are really more obviously aligned, but that doesn't mean that it only can be STEM. So if you're doing something where you're changing policy or implementing things on a bigger scale that it's not STEM, I mean, that still could potentially work. You just have to see, what is the Trump government trying to advance and how your work kind of aligns with that. So that's why I say AI just off the top of my head. Because there's a lot of executive orders and things like that are showing how Trump wants to implement AI and advance those sorts of technological advancements and stuff. But then you have to see, okay, well, if my work is aligned, okay, that's step one, maybe. Now you want to see like, the evaluation is not, is cybersecurity important, or is AI innovation important, or is curing cancer, like anything, even like in the public health space. The question isn't, is that important? The question is, how are you as an individual within that field going to be doing these things? So, it's very much individual. So every application is different. Everyone's set of documents are different. I just recently talked to someone that said, oh, well, you got my friend's application approved last year. He didn't have any publications. He didn't have any this or that. He didn't have, anything to really show impact. And neither do I. And I was like, no, well, he might even be in the same company as you doing something similarly, but his profile was different than the person that I was talking to today. That person also was approved last year and things were a lot different than last year. People want to see, not people, USCIS wants to see a lot more objective proof that you are being impactful, that you can continue to be impactful. And it's beyond just your company. So if you work at, say, Walmart, and you're implementing some sort of supply chain things to make things more efficient, or, save money, or whatever it is, they're going to say, okay, well, how is that helping more than Walmart? And then you have to kind of figure out ways to show that. So you can show how, supply chain is kind of like, bigger than just Walmart if you're helping the supply chain. And then you can do things like going to conferences, speaking at conferences, doing some sort of technical paper or white paper, or of course a publication in like a scholarly journal, but that's not always applicable for a lot of people. Mentoring, showing how you're imparting your wisdom to other people, young professionals in the field. Maybe you're part of like a judge panel, or you have some sort of professional membership, and now you're on like the board of directors, you're on like the VP of some panel within that organization. You're helping to, your industry. It's not just about your company, because America wants to know what's in it for us. How are you helping us? That's fine, you're working for Walmart, but you're an employee. That's expected for you to work at Walmart. America wants to be greedy and say, how are you helping me? We don't really care necessarily how you're helping Walmart. We want to know what's in it for us. If you're going to bypass this PERM process, which I already said, a lot of companies are pausing, or they're failing along the way, or, it's taking too long and maybe you're running out of time. PERM can take like 2 to 3 years, or maybe even more, if you're even available to have that as an option. Microsoft, again, is doing a whole bunch of layoffs. And I know that they're, obviously a lot of people work at Microsoft. So like big companies like that, it may not make sense to be able to even do PERM. And the NIW, if you do premium processing, you can hear back within 45 business days. So it's a lot for premium processing. It's like $28.05 is the government filing fee, but you do get a response back fairly quickly. So if you are on H-1B and you are ending your time on H-1B, there's certainly no time to start thinking about PERM as a way to stay here for a green card long term. The NIW might be helpful if you are on H-1B. While you don't get that green card for a couple of years, you can get your I-140 approved, and then you can extend your H-1B. And then if you have a pending I-140 at the end of your 5th year before starting your 6th year of H-1B, you can get a 1-year extension. So the NIW, is more of a long-term process, but if you're an H-1B holder, it could be a short-term solution also. It's just, it's a certain scenario that kind of works for. Not everyone is in that scenario, of course. So you like, for instance, if you're an F1 OPT person where you graduated and now you're doing your, OPT after graduation, that's for at most 3 years if you're a STEM degree. Like I said, you wouldn't get a green card for probably 3 to 5 years. So you would have to think of something else to do in that scenario. And this would not help you in a short-term scenario. But it is helpful for those in H-1B, especially for those we have a lot of clients like from India, where the backlog is very, very long. And this would help you keep renewing your H-1B, and it also will follow you. So that's another thing I didn't mention. PERM, like I said, I did say this part, it is tied to your company specifically, because they're the ones bringing this application for you. So you have to stay with that company till you get your green card. But with an NIW, it follows you and your work. So if you say your proposed endeavor is to help, implement AI and help the supply chain become more efficient and have America be less reliant on foreign countries, as long as you're still doing that specifically, like AI with the supply chain, like I just said, you can change jobs, you can change employers. It's not tied to a job title. It's not tied to a company. It's tied to the work that you are doing that goes above and beyond, to helping the country overall. So that's another benefit of NIW. But I always say, if people ask me, oh, well, I'm doing the NIW with you, but my company is now talking about doing a PERM process. What should I do? Absolutely never say no to PERM. That's always a good backup. NIW adjudications are wildly erratic right now. They are throwing in all sorts of weird things in these RFEs. I've seen strong applications get denied and weaker ones get approved. They're using things like, oh, you haven't reached the level of national importance in order to get this approved, but they don't tell you what that level is or how one could satisfy this unknown level. They're confusing EB-1A criteria requirements with things in the EB-2 NIW RFEs that I'm seeing. So yeah, you always want to have a backup plan. So even if you have a strong NIW application, it's always good to have a backup plan. I'm not telling anybody, even like the strong people, that they have any more than like a 75% chance of approval right now. Usually I would say if you had, the traditional kind of profile where you're a researcher, you have a bunch of publications, you've done you have lots of citations, you presented at conferences, that person, I would say, as long as you're advancing something that's relevant to, the national agenda, that person would have normally had like a 95% chance of approval. And now I would say that same person would probably be like a 75% chance, just because we actually did have a client that is more aligned with that traditional researcher, lots of publications, citations, conference presentations, blah, blah, blah. And he got an RFE, even though I was like really surprised, because like, wow, we like gave so much evidence of what this person has accomplished and how it aligns with what America needs and things like that. Thankfully, we got it approved after the RFE. So, they are still approving things after RFE. And there are other applicants that also got RFEs that got approved that I was actually kind of surprised that it got approved. And then there's other ones that got denied, of course, after their RFE. That's happening also. So it's just, I don't know, I'm a realist. So I'm very much about telling people, what I'm seeing and having, this is your life, your choice, where you want to be, what you want to do. And, unfortunately, it is everyone's individual gamble to try and do if it is something that you want to do right now. I certainly can't make that individual personal. It's a very personal choice. Do you stay here and fight? Or do you, go back to your country? Do you find another third country like Canada or UK or Australia, something like that? And, it's definitely difficult out there trying to decide what to do. And these applications don't come cheap, and they're very time intensive. And we definitely need you as a partner. So I can't do this without your help. I need, the client needs to help me, give us documentation, give us proof, help us figure out who to write these letters with. And certainly it's a discussion, like, I help you decide all of those things, and I might help point direction and, give my feedback and guidance and of course things like that, but it's very much a partnership. So yeah, I mean, with all that being said, NIWs are definitely still getting approved. I even gotten an approval for someone in the energy industry, which, you would probably say is not really aligned with the Republican agenda right now, but we showed it was aligned because that person also helped with energy independence from relying on other countries. So, certainly not all doom and gloom, and I'm sorry if it is kind of coming off that way a little bit now. Things were definitely more different a year ago, and I just really want people to kind of understand that we need strong documentation, that you can still get approved. We just have to maybe like figure out how to bring it all together. But, as long as you are doing things that are impactful beyond just your company, in an area that is in the national interest, we can certainly help think of ideas as to like whether if you need any profile building or what kind of documents to gather to prove the things you have already done and things like that. So yeah, I always recommend if you do have PERM available to do that as well, but definitely do the NIW. And even if your company is doing your NIW, it is still smart to do it yourself also, because you're controlling your own narrative. You're controlling your proposed endeavor. If you want to industry hop at some point, or you want to take on a different job and apply maybe you're in AI, and that could be done in so many ways. Maybe you're doing it right now at Meta or Walmart or, any other kind of company, and you want to now do it for healthcare or insurance or something that's a little bit different, your Walmart or your whatever your company is currently, they're only going to write it in a way that makes sense for you to stay with them. They're not going to write your proposed endeavor for you to go and work for somebody else. That's not in their interest. So you have to kind of take into consideration everyone's perspective and how they're going to bring it all together for you. But anyway, if anyone has any questions, you can put it in the chat, and I've certainly have talked far long enough for today.
In my case, it is a long time in the processing, about 7 months of waiting.
Well, I'm assuming
that the case is actually reviewed, or is it waiting for opening?
Well, I'm assuming obviously you did regular processing, because premium processing is 45 business days or less. So I would say 7 months is still probably a short time for regular processing. I would say they're probably more like 8 to 10 months, and it's certainly been even up to 2 years. So 7 months does not seem to be too long. It seems to be kind of aligned with what I would expect, if not even much longer than that. With that said, though, you can upgrade to premium at any point. So even though you put it in for regular processing, you can still upgrade to premium if you did now need the answer sooner and you didn't want to keep waiting. Like I said, it could be even up to 2 years of waiting for regular processing. That's not usually average, though. I would say average is probably 8 to 10, maybe even 12 months now. Things seem to be getting more and more delayed as time goes on. But yeah, you can consider upgrading if you wanted to.
That's another question. I have a PhD in agronomy. Working as postdoc, I don't have publications yet to submitted from my PhD, others being reviewed by authors proposed endeavor on sorghum molecular breeding and genetics.
Second part.
Should I go for EB-2 NIW? I prepared my petition and wondering if you have services to review.
No, we don't do any sort of case reviews or anything like that. We would be way too inundated. We don't have the capacity for that, but you could make a consultation and you could ask your questions. Anything for us to review during the time frame of a consultation, we would certainly do. Give us, give you our perspective or advice, answer your questions, etc. So you can make a consultation through our website. If you just go to waypointimmigration.org and you could go to the top for appointments, you'll see a bunch of different kind of categories. So in this instance, we have an EB-2 NIW consultation, or you can even do other, since it's the NIW consultation is usually more about helping people assess their profile and give any suggestions onto the strength of it. And then if you had anything else, there's the catch-all other.
NIW 40 pending since last 8 months. So what would you suggest at this time, given filing a premium might lead to an RFE, as officers might not be reading the petition carefully?
I feel like they're not reading the petitions carefully for anybody, unfortunately, a lot of the time. So, typically we do recommend doing premium processing for, obviously if you have like your H-1B is running out, or you need like that approved I-140 faster. It might have a slightly uptick of a chance of an RFE, but I don't think it's too much of a tick. So, if you were able to continue waiting for a little bit, then, obviously that's one choice, or you could upgrade at this point to get that response back faster. I'm not sure of your specific timeline, or of course, or anything specific to your case and other factors that might weigh into that. But, generally you could upgrade if you wanted to.
NIW out in 40 pending since. Wait, no, this is the same question.
That was the same one, yeah.
Can a letter from state senator, congressman help expedite the NIW out in 40 processing time reduction?
No, I've never, no. Usually that you can, so in this case, I have seen people use like government entities or people that work for the government as a reference letter to help support the merits of the case, to show how what you are doing is in the national interest, how it can be impactful, how the government would be interested in it, and that sort of a thing. But there is no way to change the processing time other than paying the fee and doing premium.
If my case is on actively review for 7 months, is it actually waiting review by the officer, not open, or the officer opened it without decision?
Well, I'm assuming it's waiting in a queue line because they have so many applications. So I don't know how long, once it gets on their desk, do they actually look at it? But, so we mail in all of these applications. It gets scanned in from the service center, and then it gets uploaded and transferred to wherever it ends up, whatever officer gets assigned. I have heard though that officers usually take about 20 to 30 minutes to look at each application. I've listened to some webinars from a past USCIS officer, now turned immigration attorney, and that's what she had shared. But yeah, I'm sure it's not like they only half read it and let it sit around for 7 months. It's probably just in a queue line because they have so many applications.
Can I change my proposed endeavor after a no national impact RFE, or can I add an extra endeavor after the RFE?
B stage, you can't completely change directions of your proposed endeavor, but you can clarify it, you can explain it, you can give more context. I often tell people to share their methodologies they'll use, any sort of techniques or technologies that will help them along the way, your short-term goals, your long-term goals. You could definitely expand your proposed endeavor, but you can't say my proposed endeavor is AI in healthcare, and now suddenly my proposed endeavor is to, help solve cancer or something like that. Like you can't pivot from one box to another.
If the NIW out in 40 petition filed by employer is not too company-centric, will it hold any chances of getting approved without RFE?
Just because your company brought it for you doesn't mean it's going to automatically get an RFE and a denial. That's just who comes to talk to me. So it's like the people that do get straight approvals through their company, they have no need to talk to me because, they've already gotten approved and they can go along their merry old way. So I only talk to people, once the problem kind of comes up. And that's when a lot of the time I'm seeing that it is tied too closely to their job, to their company. So those are the problems that pop up, but I'm sure, if your company phrases it in a proper way, it could be approved.
So there are quite a few more questions. Do you want to keep taking questions?
Yeah, we can do like 2 more minutes. Can we maybe do from another person? Because this
Okay.
Ricky M has several questions, so maybe we'll get to someone else's.
For NIW or EB2, I have date 2016 date. Does it benefit any of them, or EB1A is better?
I'm pretty sure I just looked at the bulletin earlier this morning, and for EB2 rest of world, see, I'm not sure where your birth country is, but if you're a rest of world country, they're up to 2023. So I'm going to assume that if you said 2016, that your birth country is probably India, because I believe that that's still 2012 or 2013, something like that. So in that case, if you are from India and you are still waiting for your priority date, it is moving extremely slow. We get a lot of clients that do lock in their priority date with an NIW, and then they would try to continue, you know, advancing in their career and building upon things to then do an EB-1A application, of which then your priority date would be current, pretty much. I mean, I'd have to go and double check the dates, but I'm pretty sure that that would be current if you were to do that. So a lot of people do want to do that in order to kind of help save the stress of waiting and being kind of like in a flux kind of scenario like that. So you could use your priority date from your EB-2 NIW towards an EB-1A, and then at that point you could probably adjust your status if it's current.
All right, one more question. Also, can I change my employer in pending I-140 or approved I-140?
So if you bring it yourself, your own NIW, then you can change your employer. You can move as long as you are doing the proposed endeavor and still aiming towards that goal that you set forth to the government that you were going to do. So yeah, I mean, if it's an approved NIW, you can still do that. And even if it's before an NIW, you would just have to make sure that you're, you know, staying in whatever status you're in, of course, and being compliant with that. But then you would just maybe show some additional evidence as to how you're working towards your proposed endeavor in your new company. Yeah.
All right. So there are a bunch of other questions, but yeah, we're at time.
All right, so I can go through the comments and see if I can answer any of them briefly. And yeah, I mean, anyone can DM me also if they want.
Thanks.
All right, thank you, everybody.